is Yasmin Sawa, and I am a teacher and a school leader. In early 2020, when COVID-19 all of a sudden changed the way we live, work, teach and learn, our main priority was of course to mitigate its immediate effects on our students and their learning. But as the time goes by, we're inevitably starting to look back and evaluate the results of this unplanned worldwide experiment. We are trying to think of the ways how we can future-proof our education and prepare ourselves for what may come next. This evaluation comes from both immediate practical and wider visionary perspectives. On the practical side, with immediate challenges being upon us, it is difficult not to slip into a crisis management mode. Schools and universities had to adapt at extraordinary rates to ensure they put in place the best possible provision for their students, and in many ways are still continuing to do so. At my school, we were of course faced by the same challenges, yet our students can be considered lucky. Those already at disadvantage were hit the hardest. Shifting education to fully digital provision assumes that all students have the ability to engage with it, from owning an appropriate device and having internet connection to having a quiet place to study. For younger students who do not yet possess the necessary study skills and self-management skills, it also created an over-reliance on families, making it problematic for working parents or those whose digital skills are not sufficient to adequately support their child's learning. Although we all did eventually adjust to the new norm, at least as best as we could, this situation is still regarded as being a temporary inconvenience. We are counting days until we are able to go back to normal. And by going back to normal, we of course mean going back to the old ways, back to our comfort zone. As visionaries, however, we need to be looking beyond today's immediate challenges. A crisis such as this has the potential to cause a severe long-term damage. And over this past year, all sectors of society have experienced it firsthand, with many businesses failing and having to close. In education, however, failure is simply not an option. Our only way forward is to use this crisis as an opportunity for a fundamental change in our sector. This involves having mid and long-term strategy whilst being directed by a bigger purpose and mission. We have to accept the fact that education has always been and will always be in that transition phase where old practices are on their way out and new ones are yet to be discovered and implemented. For example, the need to change education to be more appropriate for the 21st century is now accepted more or less universally. Yet, despite us having entered the third decade of the 21st century, many schools have so far experienced very little change. This is where zooming out and looking at a bigger picture can help. Any change and reform in education will fall under one of the following categories. Number one, what we teach, which refers to the content of the curriculum. Number two, how we teach, meaning pedagogical practice. Number three, what is the evidence of learning and how is it measured, referring to assessments and grading systems. Number four, what do we do with this data and how this information is interpreted? For example, what happens when students fail to demonstrate the adequate evidence of learning? And also what the value of obtaining certain grades is in terms of what impact they may have on the student's future. When we are trying to evaluate the effects of COVID-19, it becomes obvious that whilst the shift to online provision forced us to change the how component and do so at a very short notice, there were no clearly laid out plans as to what would happen to the what component. Since the new how failed to deliver the old what, the other components of the process, such as external assessments and streamlined progression to the next stage of education, inevitably suffered. The 2020 grading disaster and its impact on university admissions provided yet another push towards redefining assessments and associated university admissions. We don't yet know what shape the new assessments will take, but the discussions that are currently being held on this topic indicate that we can expect a number of changes to be implemented in the future. What could the changes be? For example, number one, continuous evaluation of learning, providing smarter and more timely feedback as opposed to using end-of-year formal assessments. It is to be expected that students' performance would fluctuate throughout the year, so using one-off slices of information as the only source of data to determine one's future appears to be impractical at best and unfair at worst. Number 2, testing students' skills rather than knowledge. Formal exams test for knowledge, most of which will be forgotten anyway soon after the test. New form of assessment should aim to test for what remains after the knowledge has gone. Number 3, universities may be making offers based on final rather than predicted grades. So despite its challenges, COVID-19 also opened our eyes to a new set of possibilities. Embracing technology allows us to do a lot of exciting things and with much less effort. Participating in lectures, projects, and events that previously would require students to travel can now be attended from the comfort of their homes. Learning entirely through remote delivery was new to most students and teachers. When we all return to the classrooms full time, the new experiences we have gained will make the transition back smoother and more efficient. In the meantime, we should take it upon ourselves to shape education in a way that meets the challenges of an uncertain future. If you're a teacher, parent, or student, we would love to hear about your experiences.